presentation. And let's start. Shall we? Amazing. So without further ado, we'll start with Alex Peleg. And Alex is going to present the training actual cloud attacks and how to eliminate the noise. Besides that one, just for you to meet Alex. So Alex is the co-founder of Synergy, an application, the cloud security architect, and also a DevSecOps evangelist. And I'm pretty sure that in a second you will agree with that bio. So without further ado, Alex, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much for hosting us, Gidi and Lior, as part of this webinar. I have so amazing people joining me as well, Ron and Ben, some of the experts in the audience. So let's begin. And my presentation is about trending actual cloud attacks and eliminating the noise. The reason why I chose this wording for the slide is we have a lot of noise that is going around cloud security. We are all in panic. Everything is moving to the cloud, but we start purchasing many very costly tools. Although there are some trending attacks that can be, first of all, automated and mitigated, and we should all know about them in order to prevent the next breach of our organization without talking and scaring ourselves to death. And I think that when your organization decided to move to the cloud, the security people in the crowd here must have thought, oh, we are doomed, or we now need to enforce so many different policies in order to be secure. And some of it is true, but some of it is overkill. And in this slide, we will try to emphasize what are the things that we really should take into our day-to-day hygiene. So I think that Gidi is now sharing with you a pull question.
One sec.
Yeah.
For some reason, it doesn't. I think it doesn't send it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Maybe now it will.
So the question here is about your organization and your transition to the cloud, and Gidi will interrupt me later with your answers. Just let me know that it works.
One sec.
No problem.
No,
take your time.
For some reason, I cannot send it.
So let's move without
Okay,
the pool. Nothing happened. Just let's continue with the flow. So the first thing, and this is something that we really need to worry about, is exploitation of exposed cloud instances. I'm saying cloud, but I'm talking about AWS, I'm talking about Azure, about GCP, about Ali Cloud, IBM Cloud, Oracle Cloud, whatever cloud you're using in your organization. And before I go on and scare you to death, there was one news from today. A researcher from Hermetic has identified a vulnerability that affected a remote code execution on Azure instances. And I will not explain this attack flow, but I want to explain in general. We are speaking about the cloud, but in order to access this infrastructure that is set on the cloud, we have ways, we have a path. And the obvious path for an attacker, and how do I know that? Because again, I am an ethical hacker. and I'm doing this stuff all the time for my hobby. And I need to start with identifying what are the things that are deployed on the cloud. And what are we deploying on the cloud? Most of the time, we are deploying types of applications or services that should be used by the users. In the same attack that was described today in the Hacker News, the vulnerability that led to the remote code execution on the cloud instances was a cross-site CSRF, cross-site request forgery vulnerability. Okay, at the end of the day, it's a web application vulnerability that caused a huge damage on a specific instance. The most leveraged web application vulnerabilities in order to get into the instances, the pods, and the others are one of four. Mostly it's basically a way to get to the services themselves via command injection, meaning I can run a command and get some kind of output from the instance. Easy, right? It's already remote code execution. Other can be a server-side request forgery, where I send a request to the server and I get a response from or data from an internal service that was called. I will talk about it later, but in another poll, how many of you have heard about AWS and GCP metadata service? These are services that once I have the ability to question them as an attacker, I can extract lots of information, sensitive information in regards of roles and permissions of the user in order to get and take over the whole internal infrastructure. So the full attack flow looks like this. The attacker identifies a web application. The web application is hosted on some kind of a cloud. I don't care. Let's assume that it's on Kubernetes pod as part of a ECR or EKS. And from this Kubernetes pod, once I identify the vulnerability, I now try to question and understand what are the roles and the permissions of this pod inside the cluster. Once I identify them, I will try to extract all the tokens and all the access keys that I can in order to leverage and elevate my permission until I get to the Kubernetes cluster and I take over the cluster. So this is the most prominent way. Now, what is the impact? The impact, basically, you take over the cluster, you take over the account, you take over whatever is running on this service. First of all, it's a reputational damage. Second, it can cause a disruption of this service and make it inaccessible to other clients. And of course, once I have the access to different locations in this cloud infrastructure, it may lead to leakage of sensitive data that is hosted on these compute machines. One more thing that goes without saying when there is a leakage of sensitive data is regulatory fines. And not long ago, we heard about some very big fines that some companies got, and it can happen all the time. Personally, I was in an incident that this type of action has happened, and the organization lost a huge client due to this type of attack exactly, and it happens all the time. So how do we mitigate? Let's eliminate the noise, okay? The mitigation is possible, but it requires automation. First of all, we need to restrict access of externally facing services to internal services. Sounds simple, right? In order to do that, we need to identify every cloud service that is exposed to the to the world, and we need to at least inventorize it and know, oh, we have a web application that is running on cloud infrastructure. Let's know that it exists. The second thing that most of the people here are doing is continuously scanning the web applications and the infrastructure instances for vulnerabilities. Now, I say the most of us, although from firsthand, I know that many are afraid or are not doing it frequently. Meaning, yes, we are running the scans, but CSRF is not a big issue, and sometimes we set it as a medium score or medium severity vulnerability, or we find something that we may be a command injection, but again, it's being treated after 3 or 4 weeks. So continuously scanning and identify the vulnerabilities and making the prioritization in order to deal with them is something that should be inherent from us setting services to the cloud. The third thing that I would emphasize is keeping the privileges and the roles to the least privileges. What does it mean? When I'm running a pod or an application service, it should not run in the highest permissions, in the root permissions, and it should the user that is running should not have the roles to write on different accounts or to read from different accounts that are not associated. So many organizations have a big mistake in this case, and they are creating application users that have the ability to write and read from different accounts, and it's super scary, because once the attacker is in, he can laterally move inside the organization. The next item that I want to talk about is access to sensitive data. It's a very trivial thing to say, oh, access to the sensitive data. What actually does it mean? When I speak about access to sensitive data, I can give you one example at least for each of these attacks that happened in our near past. One thing that sometimes happens, look into the elector's case, is that in the website source code, we store sensitive keys or keys to the IAM, where an attacker just needs to read the source code. There's one researcher, Ran Balzik, using a very elaborate tool, which is called the browser. You can basically read the source code and understand if there are any API keys or keys for services or cloud services, and basically use them. Very simple flow of attack. Find keys, use them. The second type is organization managed and non-organization managed GitHub and other Pastebin and Paste sites. Many developers have a very bad practice. Because they are very proud of their product, they create Git repositories, internal Git repositories that are sometimes made public, test, or even just export their project to the world. What they forget to remove is the access keys and secret keys to their cloud environment. And now there is something cool that GitHub invented, GitLeaks, which allows you as an organization to identify these types of sensitive keys that are associated to your organization. If you have an enterprise account, you will identify them. But what happens when your developer has an open source code that he puts on his own private repo? This is something that you already cannot manage, and basically how they say in our world, you are pwned. Welcome, Ben. And the next thing that we love and hate is sensitive keys that we identify at S3 buckets and blobs that are set exposed to the world. Why are S3 buckets and blobs are set exposed to the world? Very good question. Don't ask me, ask the DevOps. But it happens all the time. Sometimes because of negligence, sometimes because this was the default configuration, and now the default is private. But again, you can go to Gray Hat Warfare, look for API keys, and you will find a lot of them. And again, this is not an advice to do a hacking activity, but is done and shared only for learning purposes. Once the API key is identified, it's simple, like authenticated to your Facebook account and go inside and look and poke to the IAM and see what are the malicious things that you can do. So what is the impact? Financial damage from key abuse. Look at Tesla. They had, maybe they didn't have financial damage, maybe they liked it, but they had lots of harvesting or mining of cryptocurrencies. Also, this is not advised to do this type of activity, but Tesla shares their resources if you want to. And basically, what is problematic is that once a legitimate key or once a legitimate user credentials are used as part of the attack, it's very hard to identify, because I don't know what happens in your organization, but how many times did you go to the DevOps and ask him, why is this instance running? First of all, his receiving hours is between 3:45 and 15 past 4. And the second is that most likely he's the introvert and will not talk to you and will not respond unless you use the common methods of communication like Slack. So basically, it's very hard to identify once these keys are leaked. The second is full infrastructure access and takeover. Okay, depending on the roles and the privileges of this key that was identified, the attacker will have the full control over this account or organization, and goes without saying the sensitive data leak. And the financial damage associated from regulatory fines, I can add it again. What is the mitigation? Scan, automate, and use whatever Ben will tell you and Ron will tell you in order to make it efficiently. Your Git, web application, and expose storage and expose data. So data is the most important thing that we have in the organization, and it should be managed properly. Now, only scanning, it's good. It's not enough. This problem is an inherent problem of developers. Developers need to understand that the concept of keeping or putting clear text keys in your website source code, into your Git repos, or as part of configuration files that you don't know what will happen with them, it's not a good practice. Thank God we are in a place that there are vaults, there are sensitive data storages, and there are so many ways to secure this data instead of just maintaining it on clear text. And again, we're coming back to the privileges. Control your privileges, or control the user's privileges. Don't give them the the write all privileges on all your accounts. The next item is called poor identity protection. By the way, if you have questions till now, you are free to put in the Q&A. I will most likely try to answer them, although I may also will not. But try your luck and try to ask me questions. So the next is poor identity. Now, I don't know if you have heard, but today PayPal had a big attack where 35,000 user credentials were compromised using a vulnerability, or not a vulnerability, an attack, which is called credential stuffing. Okay, what is credential stuffing? Is when me as an attacker already know, like Ben is such a security guy that he leaks all the time his credentials. He's using all the platforms in the world and run the black hat hacker by night and the good CTO during the day. He likes to harvest these credentials and create a big database of the combinations of usernames and passwords. Now, Ben is highly privileged user. It's not like your everyday Andre or Alex, the admin. He is the highest privileged user in the organization. So what happens when Ben is reusing his LinkedIn credentials and the access to his PayPal account, or in a different case, his IEM account? Basically, the hackers are using this combination and putting into the IAM service, depending if the IAM is enabled. And they got access to the console, and basically from that point on, since Ben is the highest privileged user in the organization, they will have the access. Again, this is something that was published today, okay? I don't need to give you past news because it happens all the time. So what is the impact? Again, lack of detection, again, reuse of the same accounts, long time for organization to get understanding that they were abused. And of course, we are at Satori and we take over the whole organization, not really, just for the sake of this demonstration. How to mitigate? This is very hard. Maintain a strong and long password policy. The long is even more important than just being strong. The length matters because, again, don't tell my wife, but length matters, and the number of characters in your password actually matter. If they are less than 15, 16 characters, then it's not as strong. Yes, it may be brute possible, and if there is a credential leak, then even the 16 character password will be leaked. So don't worry about that, but at least make it long enough so every user that will try to boot, or hacker that will try to brute force your password will have a challenge. It's something that is real. Enable multi-factor authentication. You hear about it every day. In a raise of hand here from the participants that we have, how many have multi-factor authentication on all their web accounts and their privileged accounts? Yeah, I also have. I'm lying. No, I don't have, but I'm at least advocating it. So maybe other people are smarter than me. Yeah, but this is something, by the way, I don't have, not because I don't want to, because many services don't allow multi-factor authentication, but at least the privileged services, like your cloud services, do allow multi-factor authentication, and it's only a click of a button as part of a policy to enable it. Delete inactive identity and empty groups. What is inactive identity? Who manages the, I have people in the organization that left 2 years ago and their user is still active. Yes, it happens all the time. This is why most likely my colleagues will talk about it and how to manage this type of identity compromise of old users and rotate access keys. Again, I think that this is something that should be done at least every 60 to 90 days. And most of organizations don't. Like, I saw today an account that the credentials were not rotated for the last 356 days. Also happens. So this is the last mitigation. Final notes, okay? First of all, I thank you. Second, I didn't want to scare you, but actually these are the 3 most prominent ways that your organization will be attacked in the coming future. So following the things that I said, there is a recording. You can also ask and get the presentation. Just follow these rules, and most likely you will reduce the possibility of being attacked by tens of percents. Thank you so much, and I'm passing the mic back to you, Gidi, for managing the Q&A.
Thank you very, very much, Alex. So there are a couple of questions. I'll start with Ronen. Ronen basically asked, and let me quote him. So I think the length really depends on the use case. A too long password policy will make people save passwords in notes. What do you have to?
I agree with Ronen. So the concept of password management tools, not like LastPass that are sharing their source code with the whole world, but basically the concept of password management is utilities like KeePass, etc. Local. It's something that is not new, correct? Now there are several keys that, and we are talking about cloud and cloud access, that you should not store on notepads, okay? And even the generation, although I like QWERTY and following all the alphabet, but this is very not useful if you're managing lots of keys. So yeah, I agree for your day-to-day accounts. You may not use the what I mentioned and keep it somewhere hidden in the notepad. Just don't come to me when the hackers will take the keys. Okay, it will happen. So, but I advise regarding so key managers. Yes, will your grandma use this key manager? No. Where she will keep it? On a note in the kitchen. Okay, not because I'm sexist, but this is where it will be kept. And will your brother use it? The non-technical, the garage worker, most likely will not use the key management. So for them, I say, remember a passphrase that is long, and that's it. At the end of the day, once it's leaked from any of your websites, all your accounts will be compromised, because you will not generate a new password for each and every one of them, because this is what we cannot change people, okay? But we are now talking about cloud security and cloud roles and cloud access. So for these people, the technical ones that are already using the cloud, do the other things and use the key management tools, okay?
Absolutely. So Ronen, for your second part is needing to find a balance between long passwords and MFA. Obviously, whenever you have MFA, the password can be a bit shorter, but again, it doesn't mean that you don't need to have a password at all. So, and shorter passwords are no passwords. It's the same thing. Absolutely.
Why should I be care about the password if I use MFA generally?
Wow, Ron, it's a great question. Thank you so much for asking, because MFA is not the last frontier for hackers. There are so many ways to bypass your MFA, starting with a very simple, again, it's for educational purposes only, okay? But there is a platform that is called Evil Jinx that all its purpose in life is to steal your MFA. So yeah, there will be another method of phishing that the hackers will need to do. The MFA via OTP, there is the smishing capability or SMS spoofing capabilities that the hackers can do in order to get the MFA from your mobile phone and SMS. So for MFAs also, there are the authenticator applications, the Microsoft Authenticator, the Google Authenticator, which are strongly recommended for MFA purposes, or any key type, key fob authentication for MFA. And for MFA, you know that every time that you get an MFA, you have that also the option I accept. So refer to a case for 2 weeks ago, when you have the credentials and run, and I don't know how much time I do have from time perspectives, but run, when I nag you at 6:30 a.m. With do you authorize my access, you will, at the end of the day, you will click yes, and that's it. So MFA is good, not the last solution.
Just one factor. And the idea is to, again, use more than one factor at a time. Another question is from Wissam. Wissam seems like a junior guy in the cybersecurity, or he's asking for someone else. He's asking, what courses do you recommend to junior cybersecurity candidates who want to learn or who want to penetrate our ecosystem?
So
how did you start?
How did I start? Wow, Ben can tell a lot about that, but I started with self-teaching, self-education, read a lot, saw many YouTube videos of people from India with cows in the background. And basically this was my biggest lesson in life. But practice, and as soon as you are good, by the way, there are so many online courses, but for many it doesn't work, the online course. So if there is a physical course, I recommend you to attend, because just for the commitment. And once you are in the place that you know or understand cybersecurity, find your first job ASAP. Without actually doing it, you don't know anything. I remember, so my first job was with Ben, and he did my interview. And before that, I believe that I knew nothing. Okay, I had a lot of knowledge, but a theoretic knowledge without the concrete ability to put it on ground. So this is for you, Issam. I hope that I helped you.
Yeah, and good luck, of course. And the last question to you, Alex, before we move on to Ben, that is anxious to start, I think. Viviana Cohen asked, or she says, in her case, so I read it in her voice. In my case, the data I keep is too incomprehensible to the general market. Even if it was hacked, the hacker would not know the value of the data and where or how to benefit. Anything to comment on that one?
If look at the money, okay? If there is ability to take, how is your business making money out of the data? If there is a way to make money out of this data, the hackers are smart enough to find the way to monetize on it. If your business is not making money from the data, then it's not a data business. Then basically you're not a high-tech company, most likely. So the data is not relevant. Most of high-tech companies are data-driven, or their core resource is the data that they keep. It's called intellectual property. So if you say the data is not relevant, you're not really need to defend it. And basically that's it. But again, I most likely run, and Ben will say something else, and I'll give them passing them the answering rights for this question.
I'll answer from my experience, Viviana. So first of all, we like to call it security by obscurity, and we said that it's a big no-no. So the fact that someone else doesn't know something doesn't mean it's more secure or you don't have any issues, but that's in general. Specifically to your question, I think that also I don't really need to know the value of your data. You need to know the value of your data. And if I know that it's valuable to you, I can instead, for example, instead of exploiting it, or instead of disposing it, or sending it to Ben or Alex or Ran, instead what I can do is I can encrypt it and don't give you the key. And you know the value of your data. So that also can be one way of getting bitten by an hacker that, yes, may not know exactly how worth it is for you, but you know that it is worth something to you because you protected it. And not protecting it at all